Hello and welcome to Voices of Westerly, a new podcast from the United Theater featuring conversations, many of which are recorded in front of a live audience, with the creative and professional individuals who make Westerly, Rhode Island such a unique and inspired community of leaders, innovators, and artists. I'm your host, Tony Nunes, Artistic Director of the United Theater, here in the beautiful downtown arts district of Westerly, Rhode Island. The Voices of Westerly series is inspired by Westerly photographer and artist Josh Behan, who created a Faces of Westerly portrait series, which we premiered here a couple of years ago at the United and is now on permanent display and rotation in our halls. Voices of Westerly live discussions will take place monthly in our post-credit scene event space here at the United. Our second guest of the evening is a singer-songwriter who is a student of the United Music School and recently sold out her first headlining show here at the United. Please welcome Isabella Spiers.
Thank you. Hi, Tony.
Welcome to Voices of Westerly.
Thank you so much.
All right, you don't live in Westerly, right?
I'm actually from North Stonington.
Okay.
So
all right.
Close.
So I ask everybody to start this conversation, what is your Westerly origin story? And because you don't live here, and not everybody on this show lives here, I guess it's more how, for you, it's what does the town of Westerly mean to you, and how, whether through the music school or your lessons, how are you kind of a member of this Westerly community?
So that's a great question. So I always kind of think of things visually. So when I'm driving in the car, and I go to school far up in Rhode Island, so I take a drive every day for about an hour from Connecticut to Rhode Island and Rhode Island back to Connecticut. I'm constantly passing these landmarks, and I don't usually pass the United Theater, but for going to other places, I pass here all the time. And I just feel such a huge sense of pride, like seeing the Westerly sign, like welcome to Westerly, and coming to the United Theater and leaving my hometown and coming here. It almost feels like I'm like going on a plane to Nashville. It feels so welcoming and it feels very inspiring.
I want to start by talking about your kind of musical history. You're 14 years old.
Yes. And
you've already accomplished a lot for a 14-year-old. So I want to start with, where did you get started with music? We're going to talk a little bit later about the types of music you like and the musicians you listen to and how that kind of helped shape you. But I want to know, when did you realize you wanted to learn how to play music, and when did you start learning how to play music?
So it all started one day when I was about 11 years old. I was with my mom, and we were actually going into a great coffee shop called Stick and Fin over here in Westerly, and my mom said to me, she goes, look at this sign. It said Youth on the Mic for the music school here at the United, and it was hosted at the Knickerbocker. And, being an 11-year-old, my whole life have always been trying to search for something I really wanted to dream about. Like, as a little kid, I was constantly a dreamer, and I was constantly trying to, search for what I wanted to do in my life, and I just really wanted to create. I loved creating growing up. And when I found out about the Youth on the Mic, I was so excited because I was like, I finally have an opportunity to sing for a crowd, and, not many 11-year-olds get that chance. And that was the first chance I have ever gotten, and I'm very, very thankful to the United Theater and Tom Foley and the United Music School for making that opportunity come about, because that was actually the first time I've ever performed live in front of an audience, and I can't even describe how nervous I was.
What did you perform that night?
That night, I actually didn't perform a country song. I believe I performed a song called Rise Up by Andrew Day, and I used a backtrack because I didn't really know much instruments very well. Everything was so very new to me. I loved country music, but my stance at the time was kind of like, I probably shouldn't do country music because nobody else is doing that. And, you know, I was an insecure 11-year-old. I didn't want to I didn't want to try and be the black sheep in the crowd, you know?
So you weren't playing guitar or anything at that point?
At that point, I had been taking violin for 2 years. That was really the only thing I knew at the time, so no guitar.
Were you taking voice lessons or anything, or?
Yeah, I began voice lessons about that exact time with Victoria Stanger here at the United.
So before that, were you dreaming of being a singer and singing at home and, you know, just kind of envisioning you on a stage? What kind of music were you listening to then, and how has that evolved to what you're listening to now? And you said you were, you know, shy about country music, which I understand, because country music in this area, I feel like country music it's always been an incredibly popular form of music, but not so much here. At least it didn't feel like that. Right. I've always thought this myself, but it's not true, because so many people listen to country music. And I think now, at this moment here in 2025, country music is so important in folk and Americana music and all of these different genres. And they are really, you know, in front of everybody. And I think they have a much more universal audience. Mm-hmm. So I think the question is, what were you listening to when you were a kid? Mm-hmm. And then at what point did you realize, yeah, you know what, country music is what I want to do?
Yeah, so growing up, my mom would pick me up from preschool when I was about 3 and 4 years old, and I would get in the car, and typically it'd be something like Picture to Burn, Taylor Swift, or it'd be something like Something in the Water, Carrie Underwood. And I feel like a lot of what I listen to and covers I perform and what my main influences now is stuff that I grew up as a little kid listening to. And I think that's because I had a period of time when I was about 9, 10, where I was like, I don't want to do country music. Like, I'm so scared of, you know, making people see that I'm different. And I didn't want to, like I said, be the black sheep. So when I turned around 12, before I wrote my first song, I decided that I wanted to pursue country music. And that was around the time that I was like constantly leaning on interviews by artists I adored and constantly trying to figure out how to make it. And one of the biggest pieces of advice that I always received was, you have to figure out how to be different. And Taylor Swift always said that. Like, I've heard Reba say that. Constantly, it's in every book, biography, and everything I've read in the music business, is you have to find a way to be different growing up in the industry. So when I was reading about that, I was like, okay, I love country music. Like, I can't run away from this. And I had always listened to it even at that time, and it was just such an inspiration and such like a drive for me. And I've always been a belter in my music. I've loved belting. Like, my favorite singer is Carrie Underwood. Belting has always been my thing. Martina McBride, it's just always, I've loved belting. And when I was like 3 years old, I used to love Disney princesses. So in like the house and in the car, and I would dress up as Elsa from Frozen, and I would just go around belting Let It Go, like without a care in the world. And I've never really had like belting stage fright or anything like that, just like in places in Nashville and stuff.
So what are you listening to right now? Like, what music is on the Isabella Spiers Spotify playlist?
I've actually been getting into radio a lot. So I've been listening to mainly radio stations down in Nashville. Like WSM radio is my usual go-to. Basically, to sum it up, it'd be music that your grandparents would listen to, is what is on my playlist at the moment. Like Johnny Cash, Dolly, Loretta Lynn, Connie Smith, Jeannie Seely, you know, Vince Gill, I could go on. And I love exploring the stories of members of the Country Music Hall of Fame and members of the Grand Ole Opry, because there's a lot of history and a lot of things to unpack there. So typically on my playlist, it'd be something like Carrie Underwood, and then Loretta Lynn, and then Taylor Swift, and then Merle Haggard, and it just jumps constantly. And I think that having a diverse range of music that you listen to will only make your original music sound more authentic.
You mentioned the Country Music Hall of Fame, and you spent time there this past summer down in Nashville in their advanced songwriting program, which is a camp, a week-long camp, right?
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that. And you said you wrote your first song at 12, which is not something many people can say. I wrote my first song at 12. I guess before you talk about the songwriting program and going through that, when did you realize you wanted to write your own music? And how did you learn that? And how has that kind of grown between that 12-year-old and now a 14-year-old who's gone through the Country Music Hall of Fame Words and Music program?
Yeah, so when I was 12 years old, growing up, I always had this guitar that was actually the guitar my dad first learned on. And it's like an electric guitar. It's very old. It's from not very old. It's from the 90s. And
ancient, the 1900s.
And that has always been sitting in my room because my dad really wanted me to pick up music, and he was like, come on, just learn the guitar, like I can teach you. And I wanted to learn. I just, I didn't find the time. For a while I wanted to draw, and my mind got scattered on different topics. Until one day when I was 12, and I still remember everything about this. My room was a mess, and I was supposed to clean it that day. My parents were out of town, and I was, I got very distracted cleaning my room. So I look over and I saw the guitar, and I'm like, I want to experiment with that. Let's see what I can come up with. And like I said, I've been listening to a lot of Taylor Swift and a lot of interviews with her. And her whole thing, everything I saw was, I wrote my first song at 12. I wrote my first song at 12. So that kept echoing in my brain. And I was like, wait, I could say that too. 12 years old. And so I was like, I really want to write a song, and I want to create something on paper. And I've always been a huge fan of penmanship. I love writing. I'm a huge fan of cursive. Almost everything I write is in cursive. So at 12, I was like, I want to write this song about something I was going through at the time. One of my closest friends was moving across the country, and I was like, this is a great song topic. I was like, this is a great thing to write a song about. So I wrote a song called Make It Through. And that was a very canon event for me at 12 years old. And I remember setting up a video of little parts of the song, and this is going to be the first verse, and those videos are gone now, but I still have all of that memory cherished forever. And it's definitely been a huge progression from then to now. My sound has definitely adapted. I've learned a lot more things about branding and the industry and how that's all shaped me. And the Country Music Hall of Fame was one of the biggest parts of that, because at the Hall of Fame, they taught me so much stuff that I never even knew. Rolling in there, I was like, I'm probably going to know a lot of this stuff. I'm really excited to be here, but when I got there, as I was leaving, I was like, my gosh, I learned so much stuff. How is this going to fit in my brain? So at the time, I was kind of dealing with that by writing more songs off of the things that I'd learned. And actually, the day before I went to that camp, I was at the Grand Ole Opry until late at night. And I was hanging out in the backstage, and I came up with this song idea called If These Walls Could Talk. And I just really, I'm such a history nerd. And that night, we were taking a tour of the backstage, and they were doing trivia as we were going through, and they were like, what does WSM stand for? And I immediately threw my hand up, and I'm like, we shield millions. And they were like, you know that? A girl knows that. And that night they gave me a signed lineup with, all of these great people. It had Riders in the Sky. It had comedians, lots of great stuff. And I was so excited. And I decided to write this song called If These Walls Could Talk, not only about the history, but also because I'm such a nerd about that kind of stuff that I was like, I want to turn all of the stuff I know about country music history and all of these facts that I know, and I want to turn it into I'm giving the audience a personal tour of the backstage of the Opry.
That's awesome. And while you were down there, kind of the one of the hubs for songwriting in Nashville is the Bluebird Cafe. And we're very lucky here at the United to be partnering with the Bluebird, and we're going to bring up some of these great songwriters who have written hits for countless singers quarterly starting in November. You, while you were down there, got called up to perform one night at the Bluebird. While you're down there in advanced songwriting camp at the Country Music Hall of Fame, and I mean it's kind of an amazing story, actually.
Crazy.
Tell me about that, and what did you end up singing that night, and what was it like? What were the nerves like performing in this kind of sacred room where Taylor Swift got her start down in Nashville?
Yeah, so before that, I had always been listening to these documentaries. There is one particular documentary that I believe the Bluebird themselves came out with that you guys will be showcasing here at the United Theater. And that came out a few years ago, and I've always watched that in these last few years. And even before I went to Nashville for the first time, I was watching it on my TV because I read that's where Taylor Swift got her start. So I was like, my gosh, the Bluebird Cafe, I have to play there. Little did I know how crazy the gamble would be to get in the open mics there. And, I'd heard about that. I'd heard about Faith Hill getting her start there, Garth Brooks, and all of these amazing songwriters. And I was so dead set on playing there that I went there in December, and the day before I left, I broke my elbow. And I was like, I'm playing the Bluebird anyway. I'm going to play there anyway with a broken elbow. And I played my guitar like this. And I got in the hotel room at Opryland, and I was like, we're doing this. I just have these little fingers. I got this. Unfortunately, I didn't win the gamble that time to play at the Bluebird. And I played at a different bar called Tennessee Brew Works that night. And that was my first ever time playing live in Nashville. So that was a cool memory. But I was still really upset that I couldn't play the Bluebird. And a few months later, Tom Foley had introduced this idea called Nashville North to me. And he said, we're doing this project, and, and you might be really excited about it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Don't tell a 13-year-old that. These walls can only be so soundproof. So I freaked out. And he said, do you want to be a part of it? A few weeks later, he said, do you want to be a part of it? And once he said that, that was one of my greatest memories ever. And he said it has to do with the Bluebird Cafe and the Country Music Hall of Fame, which are two of my three favorite places in all of Nashville. And I was so excited, over the moon. And once I figured out I was going there, nothing could stop me from freaking out. So once I was in Nashville, it was the first day of the Country Music Hall of Fame songwriting camp. And I remember it was a Monday, and it was in the afternoon. And right before the camp was about to get out, the counselor mentor was like, is anybody playing anywhere live in town tonight? And I was just like, I don't have anywhere to play. And the kid next to me raised his hand, and he goes, I'm playing the Bluebird Cafe tonight. And I'm like, what? I just immediately screamed, lucky. I was so jealous. And I'm like, how did you get in there? I had so many questions for him. I believe his name was Cooper. He was such a great, super sweet. And I was like, how did you get in there? How'd you win the gamble? And once I got out of the camp, my mom came to me and she was like, all right, we're going to head back up to the hotel room soon. And she was like, we're going to get a picture of you with your guitar at this fountain. And she was like, all right, 3, 2, 1. And she took a video and said, you're playing the Bluebird Cafe tonight. Screams throughout the whole Hall of Fame. Just screams. And I was so excited. And I was like, what song am I going to do? I don't think I'd ever been that nervous since I was 12 years old playing at the Nick the first time. How am I going to do this? And so I said, okay, I'm going to do the song I wrote a few months ago called Dandelions, because I know that one the best, and I think it's a really symbolic song to play at one of my favorite venues for the first time. And that night, I was thinking about what I was going to say, and going up, in the documentaries, they mention how nervous everyone is. Even Faith Hill, she said she was so nervous, and I just went up there and I was like, oh, hey guys. I was so nervous, and this really sweet girl gave me a bracelet that night, and it said Bluebird Cafe on it. And I actually wore that to my show here at the United Theater because I'm a huge fan of symbols, and like I take a lot of inspiration from things that really mean a lot to me. Like even something as small as a bracelet from a little kid is really, really special, and I hold on to that kind of stuff. So playing at the Bluebird was one of the greatest places I've ever played at.
That's amazing. So you said you have 3 favorite places in Nashville. My guess is you said Bluebird, Country Music Hall of Fame, and Grand Ole Opry.
Definitely.
Okay, got it. So I always ask this question, and what are your 3 favorite places here in Westerly? Or it doesn't have to be Westerly either. It can be this region. I know you live in North Stonington, so it can be, this area. It doesn't have to be just Westerly.
Yeah, like Tom said, that is a very, very hard question, especially like all of the towns around here and growing up in all of these areas. But I have thought about this, and it's very a little cliche to say the United Theater, but definitely hands down the United Theater would be one of them. But not counting the United Theater, I would have to say that my first would be the Knickerbocker. Copycatting right now for Tom, but the Knickerbocker was one of the greatest landmarks and the first landmark of my career, and it was the starting point of everything that's branched into a huge career now. And when I was 11 years old, I played there for the first time, like I mentioned, and that's just something you never forget, and I'd love to do a show there sometime soon. It's such a great, gorgeous venue, and the walls hold so much memories. The dance floor, the stage, the lighting, just everything is so nostalgic for me. And even going there to see people perform is it's just like a light going off in my head. It's so gorgeous. Number 2, I would have to say Junkin' Java here in town. There's a lot of people that go there, but we can get more people to go. It's a great place. I strongly recommend if you're somewhere in Rhode Island or Connecticut, go to Junkin' Java. They have the best chai and coffee I've had in my whole life. And I can't have too much caffeine, but that stuff is so good. Like, I have friends from Maine who are like, this is the best coffee I've had in my whole life. They have the best specials. It just tastes amazing. I love that place. I go there almost every day. And the third one, I would have to say, generally, it's not a specific place, but I would have to say just the environment of my hometown, North Stonington. I tend to go on a lot of walks, and on those walks, I like to come up with ideas to write songs on those walks. And North Stonington is such a charming town where it's such a small town, too. Like, when you think small town, you think small people, small town, but this is genuinely a miniature town. Like, there's a tiny little church, and there's a tiny bridge that your car will barely fit through, and it's such a charming town, and it reminds me a lot of something from a movie. So I always like to go on walks there, and I draw tons and tons of inspiration from Nosto. So, yeah.
Nice. All right, so I end all of these conversations with the same frame of questioning. It's a 3-part question. And it's usually about Westerly, but I'm going to frame this one around your community and your idea of your community being, Westerly, North Stonington, this kind of whole area. What is next for you? What would you like to see in this community in the next 5 years, and how do you hope to be a part of that?
Yeah, so this community is a very welcoming community already as it is, and like Tom said, it keeps growing. It keeps getting better and more welcoming, and like I don't even know how you can get more welcoming in such a great community here. And the United Theater, I think, is definitely one of the biggest parts of that. The environment here is so great, so welcoming to people on the other side of the country, and it's one of the best places, I'd say. But I would say in general, for the overall community here, I think we're headed in a very, very great direction, musically and not musically. Like, even if I never pursued music, this is such a great place overall, and there's a lot of room for potential. So I think here we're headed in a great direction. I think I can see a lot of music coming into the picture very soon. Like, it's so crazy how just a few years ago I was scared to do country music because it's like dead here before a few years ago, and now it's like painted such color into the town, and it's really become part of our culture now, and it's so great to see that. And I would really love to be a part of the area where you guys support young artists and, getting used to the stage and getting used to not being nervous in front of a crowd, because the people here have helped me personally with that a lot, and I would really love to be a part of that and helping people younger than me and teenagers and getting used to performing live and figuring out what they want to do and having fun. Like, writing songs and performing them for a live audience is one of the greatest gifts, and Westerly has definitely been a part of the wrapping paper for that gift.
Really good answer, and I can definitely see that happening in the very near future. You'd be a great teacher.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and nothing's better than teenagers who are doing the thing, teaching the younger kids, because they look up to, we see it, with Maggie and other people like that. I think I can see you teaching very soon.
Thank you.
All right, Isabella, thank you for joining Voices of Westerly. Isabella, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me, Tony.
Thanks for tuning in to the United Theater Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. And if you could take a moment to leave a review, we'd greatly appreciate it. Your feedback helps us create content that you love. So hit that subscribe button and leave us a review, and we'll see you on the next episode.